She's not going to make it.
She's back.
Oh, the music. I love that music.
Oh no.
Or this is what he wants. This is good, right?
Is he like, yay?
He's like, yes! Thank you! Wow.
And then Matthew McConaughey from Interstellar shows it. No.
Loki! Loki, don't go, Loki! Welcome back to New Rockstars. Loki Season 2 kicks off with a banger of an episode, and we haven't even gotten to see Ms. Minutes, Ravonna Renslayer, Victor Timely, or really that much of Sylvie yet.
No.
What a season we have in store for us. This is such an exciting time to be back in Loki season. It's Loktober. This is Inside Marvel. It's New Rockstars' weekly Marvel reaction show. I'm Erik Voss. Here with me is Maude Garrett.
Yay!
Hey,
Low-key excited about this one.
Maude.
Yes.
What a beginning to the season. I think the season 2 premiere, my favorite thing Marvel has done since like the Loki season 1 finale. I like No Way Home. I like Werewolf by Night, but this is just something else. Moorhead and Benson, Kate Herron is irreplaceable. Michael Waldron irreplaceable, but they're carrying the legacy at least for season 2, episode 1.
I do like it. It's just when you look at the finale of season 1, this is chaos. This is catastrophized, you know.
Yeah.
And this is like, well, we're gonna see what else is going to be conquered? Like so much is getting literally conquered at this moment.
Oh, yeah.
And then to sort of not have him and to be able to take a step back and then to mess between a couple of timelines, you're like, okay, we're playing long game here now.
We are. I mean, we really just jumped right in the deep end too. Like we picked up right where we left off. That sense of panic.
He's wearing the same shirt. He's got the same
cut, same everything. Same altered TVA. We learned that it's not another where, it's kind of another when, and that the TVA kind of has its own historical causal timeline, which is fascinating. That's a new rule. I mean, we'll talk about it in this after show, but this is establishing new rules on a show that every episode of season 1 established new rules, and that's a difficult thing to maintain on episodic TV.
When you're messing with time and space, though. So we need sort of like reminders of rules, and there is no, it's never locked in.
Right.
The smallest variable, something can shift and it would change all over again.
Yeah.
So I think we're seeing that a little bit as well. If you're confused about this, do not fret.
That's okay. That's a reaction a lot of people, like our colleague Brandon Davis at comicbook.com had this great response to where he's like, there's a lot of terminology that's flying past you and it is hard to keep up. And I agree. It is kind of hard to digest.
I don't have the manual, and I think it would be really nice to be able to peruse it a little bit and be like, okay, it's page 47, section B, great. Okay, I need to get my head around this because it's coming at you loud and fast. I think the biggest thing as well, and we will dive more into this too, we're at the stage in Marvel where we've built out so much of said universe that everything that happens here, I see big picture. So I'm thinking, who else is this affecting and how?
Yeah. I mean, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about in this episode. We open with this clip of who's calling on the phone, who pruned Loki. Now, full disclosure, I have seen the first 2 episodes. They did a press screening earlier this week. So we know where episode 2 is going. The questions we're going to be talking about this episode are kind of broader season questions that don't get answered right away. So don't worry, we're not spoiling anything for episode 2 in this conversation. But I think it's helpful that, we're talking about where episode 2 is going because you may have seen some mixed reviews out there about Loki, the full season, all the episodes that critics saw. And
it was just 4.
It was, some of them saw 4. I'm aware of the first 2. The thing though is, episode 2 is a different change of pace. So I'm telling you guys right now, episode 2, just don't expect the same vibe that you got from episode 1, and we'll talk about that next week, and you'll see why. But episode 1 is what we're talking about today. Really exciting. We have a lot of questions that are for the full season mysteries that we don't really know where it's going, and we're going to speculate on them with you right now. But before we get into it, be sure to check out nerdriot.shop, where you can always grab the latest and greatest new Rockstars gear. I'm wearing something from our new Loki collection, a later gator.
Oh, I like that.
And you can, we just said it from Moon Knight, right? Yeah, but we got a lot of fun gators in the MCU.
I thought it was one of the Loki gators.
Well, yeah, but they say latest gators in Moon Knight. Right, I just realized that. But this is cool. Like half of the New Rockstar staff went to University of Florida, so we have to work in The gators.
It is Loki.
Yeah, this is.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this shirt any favors by showing too much of my
The
body
color
in
palette is beautiful.
it. Yeah, I'm not normally a purple
You're
guy,
rocking purple.
but now I'm Magilla Gorilla right now, and I'm having a great time with you here, Maude. So yeah, check out all the great merch from our Loki collection. We had some great Ahsoka designs, including our special Breakroom Later Gators shirt. Is that what I'm wearing?
Yeah.
This is a Breakroom exclusive.
Gator.
Support the channel and check out our great merch options over at nerdriot.shop.
Especially if you can pull off purple the way Erik can.
Do not forget to subscribe to all 3 channels of the New Rockstars Network. We got New Rockstars, we got the Breakroom here, we got the Deep Dive, and we got obviously a lot of great stuff coming out on the main channel about Loki Season 2 over on the main channel. Maude, you want to take us through what happened this episode?
I sure do. Let's do a little bit of a recap here. The episode opens up on a close-up of Kang's statue, telling us Marvel isn't shying away from Jonathan Majors with all that controversy. Cycling through as well. I had that question. I was like, oh no, we just did the big bad reveal and it's set up to have multiple versions of He Who Remains throughout this season. They're hitting it head on.
Yeah, they didn't do any reshoots, it sounds like. Or at least that's what they say. They may have removed scenes, but they did not shoot any additional stuff when it comes to Jonathan Majors or really anything for this season, which sounds like it's like the first Phase 4, Phase 5 title for which they didn't do any kind of tinkering like that. Might have just been a budgetary thing and the fact that strikes were happening, so.
Head writer Erik Martin said that they didn't do any reshoots to address any of the recasting or workarounds. Loki escapes pursuit from Mobius and B-15 by climbing into a mail cart and crashing into the bullpen of the TVA. Now, Casey tries to knock on Loki, but he time slips. It seems like time slipping just keeps happening. It keeps you in the same location, but it moves you around on the timeline. So you're like, can you show me your impersonation of a time slip?
Yes.
Yeah, I think this is important. Can
part
you
of it
actually...
is I have to tear the set down.
Oh, good.
Video.
And then as Mobius goes, oh, that looks really painful.
He was really polite about it, right?
Ugh.
He was generous.
I thought that those moments were absolutely beautiful between those two, and I love that we've got personality through the wazoo, which we haven't had in every single Marvel show.
No, they really have a genuine chemistry, and that was really the spark that got us into season 1. It's just the casting of these two are incredible, and Owen Wilson just brings his great vibe. He whispers so much on this show. Like, everything he says is at this register. Like, he doesn't want to be overheard.
And you know what I found out? Well, I really locked onto it. Tom Hiddleston does a lot of breath work in between sentences. So he will exhale and inhale and deliver his line. And he'll inhale again.
Interesting.
So now that I've said that, it's going to ruin the experience.
Yeah, you won't be able to unsee it now.
Or unhear it. Anyway, with that, really important to learn about this time slipping because it happens all throughout the episode. And as we learn, Loki was in the past of the TVA, which according to Mobius shouldn't really exist as time doesn't work in that way. Well, in the TVA especially.
Right.
I mean, the notion of time is such an anti-construct, I feel like, in this particular show, where it's like, if you think you have an understanding, like you said, they tell you what it is, and then they unsay that sometimes, especially when we have... Anyway, later in the episode, he hypothesizes that it was He Who Remains, the tempad that he had, that was able to send him to that point on the TVA timeline.
Got it.
Now, Miss Minutes has gone offline, and we meet Total Wet Blanket X5, who makes fun of Morbius's jet ski dreams. We love that jet ski motif. In the war room, the new judges' councils convenes due to Renslayer's disappearance. Now, General Dox, played by Kate Dickie, who we will have known and remembered from Game of Thrones.
Right.
Still an unlikable character.
But she's so good at it.
So good at it. And if it ain't broke,
incredible.
don't fix it. And Judge Gamble, played by Liz Carr, 2 new characters make up the new leadership of the TVA. Oh, and the guy who was asleep the whole time.
Yeah, not credited. Just like a sleepy old man. And I love that.
Is that not a depiction of like when shit hits the ground and we need to make decisions because chaos is ensuing?
And then you have Chuck Grassley up on the Senate panel and Mitch McConnell are just like, just let me retire.
In the past, though, Loki enters the war room with more Kang iconography. That was a tough one for me just for a second there, but maybe I'm time slipping too. And listens to a recording of He Who Remains talking to Renslayer. The recording has a slight undertone of romanticism, and HWR thanks Ravonna for being instrumental in the multiversal war. So we are talking, and it actually, you can see it in the design of the place. War is happening. It's ensuing.
They have a war room, which is just interesting because it was kind of like a legal, like maybe a police office, but an actual war room. And the fact that Renslayer and He Who Remains work together. And now she's been relegated, downgraded to like just a judge. That's an interesting question.
What was the information that was passed as well?
From between the two of them?
Yes.
Yeah, like what does she, obviously she doesn't remember too much. She thought the timekeepers were running the TVA, so she doesn't know that He Who Remains exists. But now, as a result of like season 1, she left before they got to the Citadel at the end of time. So she only has limited understanding. But like it seems like they have fractured memories. They've been memory wiped. In this episode, Mobius is trying to piece together if he ever met OB, but then starts to recollect certain things. Casey starts to remember certain things.
Can we talk about that moment? Not only is it gorgeous, but we have all been in a moment where someone's like, "Hi, how are you? How long has it been since I've seen you?" And you're like, who are you? And you have to fumble your way through an incredibly awkward social moment.
Yeah.
And we saw that in real time in episode 1. Anyway, that was a gorgeous moment.
Yeah, I love that. That's like that SNL sketch of like, "Hi, I'm your doorman. I've opened the door for you for every day for 6 years. What's my name?" And they're like, "Your name is Cool Guy, Chief." And it's like, "My name's Mike. Your name is Mike. My name's Mike." We talk about that all the time. It's like, yeah.
That. So the judges council, going back to that, they listened to a recording of Loki explaining that all of the members of the TVA are variants who had lives on the timeline. B15 has put out an order to stop pruning timelines because she's been red-pilled. Take that as you will. B15 gets in X5's head, telling him he had a life on the timeline, but General Dox exclaims that the TVA won't let the timeline branch. But Judge Gamble overrules. They are trying to contain this. And I think it's a really interesting thing where it's like, this changes everything. This changes nothing. Stay ignorant. In fact, I could argue, especially for my Star Wars fans out there, that the TVA is just the Jedi Order. And that the people inside are making decisions due to blind faith. And
they refuse to change.
That's it. And you're starting to wonder if you're even working for the good guys anymore.
Are we the baddies?
That's good television, though. Loki time slips in and reveals the Kang behind the Timekeeper's facade. And, I like that moment with the pruning and it kind of peels back.
Yeah, very like Hela Ragnarok ceiling, she crumbles it down. This is a history that was wallpapered over. But it's interesting, I talk about this in the breakdown, the Easter egg breakdown, but like if he remains with the power to completely restructure the TVA aesthetically, why would he still keep the faces underneath the wallpaper? Why not just completely warp the wall? I think he had a chance. He's like, maybe someday I can come back.
Or since this is a Loki show, it's all illusion magic.
Well, yeah.
You had to put the illusion up, and then the pruning was able to break through of the illusion that was in place.
Do you think it's part of his plan that people come to these realizations, these truths? Like he expects this to happen. He wants people to be like.
I thought it had all been written out already.
Well, yes, but how much has been written out? How many layers does this simulation go?
And it was wall pruning in there as a variable.
Yeah, I think it's possible that he remains wanted Sylvie to kill him, wanted the sacred timeline to rupture, wanted people to go back to the TVA into an earlier era where Kang was still ruling it openly. I think he's gamed this out several times. That's why Loki was so shook when he's like, everything he said made sense. I think Loki's like, is this conversation I'm having with you, Mobius, right now, part of that script? And because I think the central theme of this season, like it was last season, is do we have free will? How much are our decisions pre-scripted, preordained, and how much control do we have over our own lives?
That's all Sylvie was fighting for. That's why she killed Kang. She wanted to empower and have free will back again.
Yeah.
But then it's like, well, maybe that's not the best idea.
Or maybe that's what he wanted her to do.
But he would need to be released.
Yeah.
I think.
Or unleashed. Yeah. Or that's just part of a destined Ragnarok cycle. One of the other things I talk about in the breakdown is how, it's weird how in the past era of the TVA, there's some other timeline crisis that's happening. We thought that was the present era, the archives, the final season of Loki season 1, Mobius B15 talking about 63 branches. Well, does he expect us to prune them all? We thought that was a reference to what Sylvie had just done.
Yes.
No, that was an earlier era. So it seems like cyclically, the TVA goes through these patterns, this cycle, to always have a multiversal crisis that just happens for for one reason or another. And it's kind of like the TVA's Ragnarok. Like they are destined to go through this cycle. And
that sounds exhausting.
So it's like the previous iterations of the Matrix. There's always some anomaly like Sylvie who thinks that they're the revolutionary who tears everything down, but the architect is like, actually I've had this conversation 6 times before.
Yes.
And I think that's what there's a lot of Matrix parallels. I think. I mean, you can't not have a Matrix parallel if you're going to do certain types of sci-fi, reality-based sci-fi at this point. Anyway, getting back to the episode.
Loki and Mobius leave X5 and General Docs. They share a really weird, intimate forehead touch. Care to explain that moment?
So weird. I love Wunmi Masaku's reaction. She's just like,
Yeah, what?
They love that stink eye from her. They put it in the closing credit art. You know, they have like headshots of all the people from memorable moments of the episode. That's the one they use for her. I think it's perfect.
She's great.
Yeah, she's incredible.
It's good stuff. Anyway, Docs asks X5 to go get Sylvie. Let's bring this point of the season back on track here. Mobius and Loki find Ouroboros, played by Ki Hui Kwan, and we get some fun time travel weirdness. Now, Ouroboros is supposed to be able to tell us what the hell is going on, but uses such jargon that I found it a little confusing.
It happens so fast. They use this Wes Anderson style like frame composition and cutting to where they keep them center frame looking directly at the camera, cutting back where they do when TT tries to do this in Ragnarok. But they do it throughout the scene. It happens so fast that you do have to kind of watch it a few times to gather what
I was
they're saying.
actually so sidetracked by the beautiful set design.
It looks so good.
It's so cool with these gorgeous saturated colors of like, you know, marigold and
sea foam.
Yes.
So much sea foam.
Yes.
You don't see that color in paint anymore. That's like a very like 60s, 70s color.
I was gonna say like a teal kind of esque thing, but sea foam?
It's not as interesting as teal. It is sea foam.
Bring
It's pale
it.
and awful and wonderful at the same time.
So Loki in the past talks to Obi and gets himself set up for success in the future, having him build a temporal aura extractor. Say that 10 times fast.
Yeah, I'm just still getting over. I've been saying temporal because that's how Owen Wilson says it, but it's temporal. But Owen Wilson's the only one in the cast who says temporal, like shrimp temporal.
Yes, yes.
And I've been saying, people are like, why do you keep saying temporal? And I'm like, because that's how Owen Wilson says it, but it's like, it's temporal. So I'm trying to remember, but it's temporal still slips out, and I think it's okay.
Temporal aura extractor.
Yeah, accent on the first syllable.
Temporal. Because it's only temporary.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What does that mean? Still don't know. Obi, as he's affectionately called, warns that using the extractor on something called the temporal loom could peel off Mobius' skin and then turn Loki into spaghetti if they fail.
I love the simplicity of spaghettification.
Spaghettification?
We learn if you fall into a black hole, you turn into spaghetti, which totally feels like that moment in Quantum Mania, what Wanda Maximoff did to Reed Richards. I just love that they're sticking with it. Yeah. I would love to turn into spaghetti, but I just love the idea of his skin peeling off just sticks with Mobius the whole episode. He's writing skin in dead skin because that's what dust is. I love it.
So Loki, Mobius, Obi, and B-15 enter the temporal loom control room, which is overloading due to the new branch timelines clogging the system. Obi needs to close the blast doors to protect the TVA while he thinks about a solution, which is obviously this is the end of the world again, meaning that Loki and Mobius need to act quickly. And of course, Loki time slips again.
He does.
This time into the future and leaves the time stick behind. He rushes through the TVA looking for a new one as he needs to prune himself in order to live. How make that make sense?
Well, it's not dying when you prune yourself. You're just extracting yourself from the time stream.
Yes.
So, temporal aura is, I think, one term that might have like confused some folks. We did hear it briefly in season 1. When you are booked and processed as a variant through the TVA, one of the steps you go through is you go through this gate to scan you like a metal detector, and it gauges, it measures your temporal aura. And it's also something like the guy who says, are you a robot? Are you something that most cultures deem to have a soul?
Yes.
So it's like a robot detector and like a soul detector. So I think the implication is that every sentient intelligent being has a soul, and that those souls have a unique temporal aura. It's like your aura, your color, your essence, your life essence.
Yeah.
And the temporal aura is like where you exist in time. Like the way you connect to all of chrono energy that flows through different timelines. No matter where you are throughout history, this is how the TVA can find you. It's like your fingerprint. So
The soul aura.
Yeah, so imagine right now, like
they'll find
CCTV and the FBI can use facial recognition software. The TVA has a version of this that can just like measure your stink. Your time stink.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the temporal aura is. So when you prune yourself, your temporal aura is just kind of floating now. It's extracted. It's not like stuck anywhere in time. Like Slaughterhouse 5, Billy Pilgrim's consciousness becomes unstuck in time, like what Logan did in Days of Future Past. You're kind of hopping around to different... It's like that, but physical. Like your body's now just kind of floating in a stream, and then they can use this extractor to kind of fisherman hook you from that stream and drag you in.
That's exactly what we see as well. Mobius suits up to run towards the temporal loom and activates the temporal aura extractor, which shoots a line into the timeline. And so then in the future, Loki's meter turns green, which means you got prune. Ding! A phone starts to ring near Loki, and as Loki approaches the phone, the elevator doors open to reveal Sylvie! But time's running out for Loki to prune himself, and he doesn't have a time stick. Obi closes the blast doors, and Mobius starts to hoof it, but it looks like he's not going to make it. Yeah, but just as Loki and Sylvie are about to reunite, Loki is pruned from behind by someone that we actually don't see, catapulting him from that timeline and launching him and Mobius back into the TVA just before the blast doors close.
I loved this. It was so sweet. Like, it brought a tear to my eye because it's like, it's such a great metaphor for what this show is. It's two weirdly dressed goofballs who are just floating around in timeless nothingness, who just chaotically and comedically smack into each other and both hug each other and save each other. It reminded me of that moment in The Martian, a movie I really like.
Yeah.
I mean, there was other Martian references with the duct tape on the helmet, but like how like Mark Watney is just kind of floating above Mars. And who is it? Bryce Dallas Howard or Jessica Chastain? Jessica Chastain.
Yep.
I love the BoJack joke where it's like Amy Adams, and then Jessica Chastain's poor woman's Amy Adams, and then Bryce Dallas Howard's a poor woman's Jessica Chastain.
Justice for Bryce Dallas Howard.
Might be. Don't sleep on Bryce Dallas Howard.
She's
fantastic.
great.
I mean, she could do nothing wrong until she directed that Lizzo episode of The Mandalorian season 3. It's the first thing she did I wasn't crazy about. But otherwise, she's wonderful.
She's shown me her Tyrannosaurus and Velociraptor impersonations, and let me tell you,
she's great.
That was a good time.
No shame, Bryce. But there was a moment in The Martian where they are just kind of like floating around and they hug each other. And just the fact that you save someone by hugging them and then you both smack onto each other, it was romantic. Was it not romantic that these two ended up in that pose?
Honestly, I'm taking what you're saying and I'm just reminding men, hug your guy friends.
Yeah.
You're probably due for a good hug.
Yeah.
That's all.
Sometimes it's all you need just to save someone.
Just a little hug.
But don't hug people who don't want you to hug them.
No, not everyone's a hugger.
Not everyone's
I'm
a
hugger.
So this episode kind of comes to an interesting cliffhanger for next week, right?
Yeah.
We see Doc's X5 leading these hunters through a time door. They got duffel bags filled with reset charges. It doesn't look good. B-15's like, all this for Sylvie? Like, Sylvie is now kind of like, enemy of the state.
Yes.
Like, suspect
She's
number
gone
one.
rogue a little bit.
Yeah.
And then Hunter D90 implies that that might not actually be what they're up to.
Oh, that there might be something else going on?
Yes, more nefarious. And then in a post-credit scene, we see Sylvie not in the TVA, but in a branch timeline. What is that? Broxton, Oklahoma?
Broxton!
Oklahoma.
What's a really, really fun Marvel Comics reference. That's where New Asgard relocates to after the Ragnarok event. So in the MCU, we have like Tonsberg, Norway. In the comics, it's Broxton, Oklahoma. And so much shit goes down in Broxton. It becomes like the episode, and they chose it knowing that like middle America, Broxton, Oklahoma, it's like the whole city of Asgard just floats a couple feet off the ground.
Oh, I love
It's very fun. It's very fun. So
Oklahoma didn't know what hit it. And that was all happening in 1982 as well, that part of the timeline. Yeah, she's looking a little different too.
She just wants to try everything. I love this post-credit scene. This is like one of my favorite post-credit scenes because it's true to the character. It's not completely random, and like they chose 1982, and we knew it would be 1982 from like interviews ahead of the season, but we didn't know it was going to be Broxton, which just makes it fun because we have this wonderful character actor who plays Jack, who's like, well, we got Big Macs, we got shrimp gumbo, shrimp cocktail. No, he just started listing, but he said we could try our new Chicken McNuggets, which is great attention to detail because Chicken McNuggets were released in 1981. So to them, the Chicken McNuggets were a new phenomenon that they had to push onto their customers.
A year later. Because that's Oklahoma?
Well, yeah, if you're in Oklahoma, like sometimes you're just kind of like a couple months behind, everything else, at least in the 80s.
And I feel like Sylvie's found like a nice safe place to be where she's not going to be hunted and she can fly under the radar as well.
It's perfect for her.
She's just trying to find that normal American life in the 80s. And then, of course, it cuts to black. So we've got some questions about that episode.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the number one big one is, bring, who's calling?
Who is calling? Just, again, we have seen episode 2. This question is not answered in episode 2. But we have like lots of possibilities of who could be calling.
Lay him out for me.
Well, look, the reference point seems to be the finale of The Matrix, the third act of The Matrix, when Neo's running through the Art of the City Hotel, and then it's switched on the other line. But then when he gets there, before he can answer the phone, poof, poof. In this case, it comes from behind, and it's some mystery figure who is pruning him. I think we should first ask the question, is the person who is calling the same person who's pruning? Probably not, because they don't have cell phones.
No. They
but
wouldn't be in the same room.
Right, so it's probably someone else. So we have like 2 mystery figures that Loki is connecting with right now. The person who pruned him did him a favor, because he needed to be pruned. He was looking for a stick.
Is it him?
Maybe. It could be him. It could be Mobius. It could be Renslayer. It could be another version of Sylvie in that moment. Because I think it's possible that we're going through this point in history and people are going to be looping back on themselves. So my thinking is that at some point in this series, later on, maybe episode 4 or 5 or 6 or something like that, I think we're going to see a crazy time-slipping montage. Because I would have thought, like, if this ends, this episode seems to cure Loki's time-slipping, right?
It does.
Yeah. But we know from trailer footage that he time slips to that jet ski parking lot. So he's going to go back into a time slipping curse at some point.
Oh.
So I think he's gonna lean into the time slipping. He's gonna use that to jump back in time even further to when he and Sylvie were in the Citadel. And he's gonna try to alter history so that she doesn't kill He Who Remains and restore He Who Remains. And put things back.
Okay. So you think that this is like a bookend sort of thing. So things that are happening in episode 1, we're actually going to see a different side of that, whether it's past, future, or present. And that's kind of answers that question.
Yeah, I think it's very possible that someone calling him in that moment could be another Sylvie who's calling to get him to stay focused and to not turn around. Like, it could be something like if you look at yourself, in Back to the Future Part 2, where they look at themselves and then they faint. And it's almost like a spaghettification joke because Doc Brown is like, well, one of 2 things will happen. You'll either both just look at each other and scream and pass out and faint from the shock, or you'll unravel the space-time fabric of the universe.
What if Erik just walked in? That would be so cool. How would you...
I think I would turn into spaghetti.
Yeah.
And then that Erik would eat me. Like in the challenge finale, when Nani just went nom 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 nom. Do you guys watch the challenge?
Erik, no, it's you.
And that's the real Erik. Can we do challenge breakdowns on New Rockstars, please? God, I love that show. That's my comfort food that Kelly and I watch, my wife. I love the challenge.
I'm going to be real with you. I've never seen the show, and I'm wondering what's more complicated, me trying to understand timelines and time slipping, or whatever that was.
This is a whole other side of me that you don't see on New Rockstars. This is literally what I put on after I've spent all day analyzing Marvel and like Steven Spielberg stuff.
It's your comfort
I
food.
unplug and I play Wingspan on my iPad and I look up and be like, what the hell is Banana saying now? Anyway, this needs to be like a whole other side thing.
I like it.
So who is calling? Who pruned Loki? I think there's a good likelihood that it's like an alternate Sylvie.
Yep.
It might be He Who Remains, who is like trying to put Loki back on this path so that Loki can be like, wait, well, I think He Who Remains actually might be the one calling. Because we know He Who Remains will be inside of the TVA at some point in a future episode. This is from trailer footage. We're not spoiling anything. He Who Remains might be like, don't get pruned. I want you to continue time slipping so that you can time slip back to the night that Sylvie stabbed me. So I don't think He Who Remains will want to prune Loki. I think He Who Remains might be on the phone. And then someone who pruned Loki is going to be Sylvie because she wants to keep time as it was. So it's, it could be a variant Sylvie, a variant Loki, a variant Renslayer, but it would be someone who wants Loki to stay fixed in time at this point.
Okay, got it.
So we'll get back to Inside Marvel, but first we'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors to help bring Inside Marvel to you. We want to say thanks to Spin Master for sponsoring Inside Marvel today to introduce their new brand, 4D Build, featuring licensed 3D Marvel puzzles. So, over here, we have, a puzzle of Mjolnir. 4D Build makes detailed cardstock 3D puzzle model kits. So if you're a Marvel superfan who digs puzzles or wants to add to your museum of Marvel collectibles, you are gonna love these. Everything you need to build a 3D puzzle comes in a box. You're not gonna have to go hunt down like a tiny screwdriver or anything like that, an Allen wrench, whatever. Each box contains a set of cardstock puzzle sheets, instructions, and a punch tool to help get those pieces out. Yeah, this is Mjolnir. And
looks beautiful.
Yeah, it's such a cool thing just to kind of have around and feel worthy.
You can't pick that up.
The instructions are super clear, easy to follow. Puzzle sheets have letters, puzzle pieces are numbered, and have color dots to help connect them to the right places. This Mjolnir took us about 2 hours to build, which, you know, less time than it took to actually forge. And then wait.
Oh, you're worthy!
I'm worthy. This thing is super sturdy. Plus, it's got replica level detail.
Yeah.
And it comes with this display stand, so you know it's easy to show off. So to get a 4D Marvel puzzle model kit of your own, just click one of the links in the description below, or head to Target or to Amazon. For as little as $15, you can start your Marvel, Star Wars, or Harry Potter puzzle collection today.
All right, so next question that I have. Wait a damn minute. Now, if the sacred timeline feeds into the temporal loom, does that mean that the TVA is located in physical space near the Citadel at the end of time, or am I overthinking all of this?
I don't think you're overthinking it. I think these are the right questions to ask.
Okay.
Like, we now know that the TVA exists on its own, like, timeline axis, which wasn't the case before. We talked about this, but, like, it's a big deal to say that the TVA is not in a null time zone. It kind of flows along its own historical timeline, and revisions can happen, retcons can happen, resets can happen within that space. So that's where it is in, like, a temporal space, but what about in a geographical space? Because previously, when we saw the sacred timeline, it was curving around the Citadel at the end of time, and it was like a blue color. When Sylvie stabbed He Who Remains, or shortly before that, it started to fragment into blue, into purple strands. That is a different color scheme than what we see in this episode, where the temporal loom is almost like the full spectrum. It starts as like kind of white, but mostly golden, but then you see all different colors fusing into it. And that's but normally in the TVA, it seems like golden orange is the color of temporal radiation. So I think it is possible that like the Citadel at the end of time is like further along at the end of time of that sacred timeline.
Okay.
And then, but I always like the idea that it was like a circle, but I guess we only ever saw it from one angle. We didn't see
the whole thing
from the other side. So I don't know if it was a full circle. I think what we're seeing here is the far end of it. So I'm trying to see.
We need visuals.
Okay, this is a shirt I was wearing before. I'm gonna like braid it into a rope.
Yes.
So if you want to grab this end, and then I'll grab this end. Okay, so this is the sacred timeline strand.
Okay.
The loom is like right here. So, or no, we'll say the loom is here. So it starts like as this, right? And then it's taking abstract time, and then it looms it into a braid. Like so. And then so Maude's at the end of time, and then it starts to curve. The Citadel is right here at the end of time. So they have that view of it. The TVA might be right here, kind of at the beginning of it, where the temporal loom starts to braid everything. So we have the end of time, and then we kind of have the beginning of the timeline, the sacred timeline, as the TVA defines it so. Now, the confusing thing now is, as we see when Loki's running around the future of the TVA, it is taking abstract time, and there are already branches that are forming before it hits the loom, which is a problem because those branches were not formed by the loom. That was not like TVA certified branches. These are just chaotic other branches that are going off into the red zone before the TVA kind of knows how to clock it and how to register it. So I think that's the problem, is like it should just be abstract time, and then it starts to coil at the base of the loom, and then the loom kind of makes one strand, and then the Citadel's at the end of it. So I think they are kind of at like far ends of that spectrum of that strand, and so they can't really see each other. That's my thinking of it. Does that make any sense? Did I make things
You know
more
what, you
confusing?
said it, you spelled it out in absolute layman's terms, and here I am still like, my thing is when you start messing with time and space, and then time multiverses as well, and then you undo time, and then you slip through different parts of time, it needs to make crystal clear sense. Otherwise you're gonna just be like me and just be in struggle city and be like, I'm just gonna have to switch it off and you tell me what's happening.
But you know what? I think that's the fun of Loki. Is like you do have to kind of switch off your brain and just it's vibes. You're along for the ride, and that's what I think Tom Hiddleston does such a good job of. Is he is so confused and so bewildered and so rattled, and he's kind of a good surrogate for the audience.
Yeah, that's true.
But he doesn't ever get dejected or cynical. I think it's so wonderful when he time slips back to the past with OB, and he's like, okay, OB, so we haven't talked yet, but we will talk in the future. I need you to build something and then hide it in a drawer. And that's kind of like that, remember that Jim Caviezel movie? Oh, Jim Caviezel's in it, but who else? Dennis Quaid is in it. It's called Frequency. Whereas Dennis Quaid was a firefighter in the 60s who gets like murdered by a guy, and his son is a cop in the 90s and starts to like, they start talking to each other through a ham radio through time.
Yes.
And then he's like, Dad, you have evidence file on this guy? I need you to hide it in a drawer that you know whenever he touch, and then like he does it, and then the present day son opens it. He's like, it's still here in the drawer. Doc does this with the DeLorean in 1885, so that Marty will find it in 1955 at the beginning of part 3.
Doctor Who does it in Whispering Angels
Yeah.
episode.
It's a cool thing. They are taking in all these other sci-fi tropes of like perma-placing objects that'll never be disturbed so that people in the future can use it, of new memories forming. I think that's such a cool, these are cool new rules that we speculated on in season 1, but they really just seems like they formed a list of every cool sci-fi trope, and they found a way to justify it within the internal logic of the show. And so far, in season 2, episode 1, they're doing a good job.
That's it. And I don't, if you've noticed that I'm not saying things, I'm thinking a lot, but I can't say it yet. So
go ahead and say it. Go say, like, what general thoughts from this episode? Heat check. How are you feeling?
Yeah. Okay. So I thought it was quite strange to unleash what I thought would be Kang the Conqueror. We see the re-imaging of the entire TVA in his image, and I thought that we would hit the ground running with what that looked like. And so I think it's interesting that it's like kind of cranks it back a little bit and is starting to, like you said, try to stitch together this chaos that's erupting. I will always love Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston having scenes together. I think that is brilliant because you're needing sort of like I think like an intellectual break from all that science fiction stuff that's happening, and then you have this beautiful banter and these moments and this character development that's happening there as well. Like at the end of the day, this is a sci-fi buddy cop kind of thing, like a detective sort of show, and I love that. I think I have more questions of where this is going to go, but I'm in for the ride.
Yeah, I think that's a completely valid place to be. This episode does leave us with a lot of questions, but it's a kind of mystery crafting that I feel like, at least right now, we're in good hands for how to, like, these simple mysteries. It's not just like, is there confusion on what the rules of the world is? It's a phone ringing. It's someone sneaking up behind another character and stabbing them in the back and leaving that, because those are easy to answer questions, and I assume the show will.
Who done it? And that leads
kind of
back into this like buddy cop kind of like, you know, mystery, the detective sort of side of things, but they're detecting time and space.
I think what works really well about this first episode is it really just puts the onus on the cast to do what they do well. Yes. Tom Hiddleston, Kiyoe Kwan, Owen Wilson, Wunmi Mosaku, the new actors they bring in between Liz Carr and Kate Dickie. They crush it. Eugene Cordero crushes it. And then so they're all in a room together, and it's a physical room. It's not the volume. It's an awesome looking RNA office set that we see Kiyoe Kwan, Galinda down to, and they actually built it because they use a handheld camera so that we know that we're in the volume, or not in the volume, we're on an actual practical set, and it feels like we're just in a room with some really funny, interesting, quirky people who are reacting to each other and have very strong feelings. And I personally found it beautiful that they know that they don't know all these strangers on other timelines, but B-15 is like, no, we cannot let them die. And then without debating, they all realize, you know what, I'm gonna sacrifice my own life just to prevent these other people from dying. They are all heroes working together to try to fix things. And that's my favorite kind of story. Just a lot of noble people, and then maybe there's one who's not afraid to stab people in the back. And I think X5 is that one. He's gonna be the cipher of all this.
It's funny that you say they're all heroes and they're choosing to ignore the fact that they had other lives and that they are in themselves a variant, but I think that this is a one-way ticket to an existential crisis, if you ask me.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they're currently going through that, but they're just doing their best.
Yeah.
They're doing their best to, like, keep up and to stay afloat.
And this is begs the question, would you rather stay ignorant or would you want to learn?
Ignorance is bliss. The yummiest looking steak I've ever seen on screen. How do you feel about this? I think we should leave it there, and we'll check back in next week. So it's so much fun to be able to talk about Loki. It's a perplexing, weird show, and it's such a roller coaster, and I'm really excited to chat about it for the next 6 weeks.
Shout out to Sylvie's mullet. Yeah. Real MVP.
So great. The hair. Oh, what a delight. Now, in a couple hours, we should have the Easter egg breakdown out on the main channel of this episode. I found a lot of crazy crap that they hid in the production design. Really cool. On Sunday, we're gonna have like kind of a sneak peek for episode 2 coming out on the main channel. We'll be back here on the Breakroom Thursday of the following week to talk about episode 2, and we have some thoughts about it. But brace yourself. It's gonna be a weird one.
Go in with an open mind.
Go in with a very open mind. And then reminder, please subscribe to all 3 channels on the New Rockstars Network. You can follow Maude at
Maude Garrett.
And you can follow me at EA Voss. Subscribe to Inside Marvel wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll see you next week, everybody.
Is it even next week? Because what is time?
What is time? Have we already had that episode? Bye, y'all.